this way. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I was walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I was singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Good morning. Great. Wow, I don't know where that came from, but it sounded nice. That's a great way to start our day today. Welcome to one and all to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Welcome to one and all. I want to begin, as always, by embracing all that you bring with you to this space, all of your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, all that helps make you who you are. And this goes for those who hear me say this every Sunday, as well as those who might be joining us for the first time today. You're equally as welcome and appreciated. And of course, it includes those who are streaming with us. So thank you all for being here too. Great to have everyone. We've got some special folks with us. Kelsey and Marissa Weddle are here, the Weddle sisters. The Weddle sisters are in the house, I think is appropriate to say. And my gosh, they are going to steal the show, and there's nothing anybody can do about that, nor do we want to, because I got to tell you, they steal the show everywhere they go. We are so grateful for you being here, for the gift you give, and they've chosen some very special music to help honor Carl Maxey's memory today. So be thinking about the choices that they made, not only as you hear their talent, but appreciate the heart and thought they put behind it today. So thank you both. And also a couple of other friends are our good friends, my good friends are in the house as well. Sandy Williams with the Carl Maxey Center is back there. And I don't know how many of you have gotten to know my friend Pastor Walter Kendricks with Morning Star Baptist Church, but he's here today too, and also representing the Carl Maxey Center. There he is, yep. And Sandy told me that he's on vacation and didn't want to come up when she gives us a little bit of report about where the Maxey Center is. But I'm going to actually say that your vacation is over, my friend. And I want you, if you will, be so kind. I don't think not everybody here has gotten to know you, and I'd love you to introduce yourself with Sandy and talk about putting you on the spot. I know I didn't get permission. Bad friend. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you I don't know, my name is Sandy Williams. I'm the publisher and editor of the Black Lens newspaper, and I am the executive director of the Carl Maxey Center. And it's my friend Walter Kendricks, and as friends do, friends make friends do what they don't want to do, right? So I'm just going to briefly give you an update. I'm always excited to be here. For those of you who are not familiar with the Carl Maxey Center, I just assume everybody knows what it is. So a group of us got together a couple of years ago and decided that there was a need to create a space in Spokane that addressed racial and social justice, specifically focusing on the African American community and looking at racial disparities. And that center is going to be named after one of our social justice champions in Spokane, which is Carl Maxey. So the Unitarian Church has been a part of this process since the very beginning, and I'm really grateful for that, both in your spirit, but also financially. And, people love on you and pray for you, but it takes money to build things. So I'm grateful for that. But really briefly, the update is that we have our final plans finished for the remodel, the first phase of the remodel, so that's exciting. It's a slow process, I told folks this morning I'm learning patience in this process because I wanted it to be done like yesterday. But the plans are done. We're getting the budget finished from the contractor and the subcontractors. Once that's done, we submit that to the state, and then they release our money. We have money set aside in the state capital budget to start the remodel. So knock on wood, we'll break ground either in January or February of 2020, and then the remodel will get started. So that's where we're at. But it doesn't matter because we're already doing stuff in the building. We're having events, we're having meetings. The roof is leaking, there's no heat, nobody seems to care because they love being in the space. And so I'm really excited. I'm going to let Pastor Kendricks say a few words, but I just wanted to honor Jacob, who's sitting back there. So this beautiful painting was done by Jacob Johns. It was commissioned by the Maxey Law Office and the Law Office of D.C. Cronin that we're going to have hanging in the building, framed and hanging in the building when it's finished. But powerful, powerful artist. So I just want to honor you, Jacob, and thank you for what you did for us.
Good morning. I am Walter Kendricks. I am pastor of Morning Star Missionary Baptist Church, which is right up the road. Sandy's main partner in crime. Don't have much to say other than I'm with Sandy and I'm with Todd. How's that?
Yeah, and Jacob, beautiful. Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah. Now, thank you. Now I'm gonna be rude and conduct some business real quick because Walter, you're here. And last time we planned our next lunch, I don't know how it happened, but I was scheduled to have lunch with you every day forever. I think it's December 5th. Is that what you have?
If you say December 5th, my friend, that's what it is.
Okay, all right, December 5th, man. We're doing it. I had to get that taken care of. Now that I was afraid I might have missed it. Oh, where were we? I'll tell you what, since we've taken a little bit of time here this morning, rather than taking time out to greet one another as is our usual custom, let's go ahead and move forward with our, because we've got a lot of special stuff going on, special music, and I don't want to short anybody any time. A great presentation for our children coming up, so let's go ahead and light our chalice, the symbol of our faith, of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community, and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world, and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
The following words are an excerpt from an article written for the Black Past. Carl Maxey was adopted by a Spokane, Washington couple immediately following his birth in Tacoma, but ended up in the Spokane Children's Home after his adoptive father disappeared and his mother died. When Maxey was 12, the Home's board decided it would no longer care for African American children, and he was placed in the Spokane County Juvenile Detention Center. Years later, he said, "So if you wonder where some of my fire comes from, it comes from a memory that includes this event." Known as a brilliant attorney and persuasive orator, even by local officials he frequently opposed, Maxey handled controversial and high-profile cases throughout his career. He defended accused criminals, helped women gain contested divorces, represented conscientious objectors, and once convinced Washington's governor not to send a prison escapee back to Georgia, where he was facing execution.
So please rise in body or spirit to sing a very familiar hymn to this congregation, "We Shall Overcome." We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
I'd like to invite all the children to come up. Come on, come on, come on, come on. All my pals. Here. Okay, this is the first lesson that we teach in preschool to all the children. And we have some helpers here, so it's going to be a little complicated, maybe. This circle is our community. And this is our flaming chalice. It looks like a cup. It's a very big cup. I wonder what it can hold exactly. Some people feel like it holds the spirit of love, justice, and truth, or maybe just the spirit of mystery that some people call God. Do you want to put this on top? We put a candle in our chalice because a flame is mysterious. Wait, we're going to light it. And beautiful, and it reminds us of the Spirit. It's a very big cup. I wonder how many people could drink from a cup this big. So all of our kids, we want you to come and get in our circle. How many people can we fit in our circle here? It's getting pretty crowded in our circle. You know, sometimes it's hard to be in community. One person might do something another person doesn't like. Sometimes there's not enough room, and you feel kind of squashed. So our Unitarian Universalist community, we made promises to each other about how we're going to treat each other so that we can get along and do what's right. We call these our principles. They are our promises. Our first promise is red, for respect people. Each person is a special gift by being his or her or their selves. Each person is a gift. You are special just by being yourself. You are a gift. Who has our gift? Reese, bring the gift up here. We don't know all the wonderful things about each other until we learn about each other. And to find out all of our gifts, we are all precious, so we all treat each other as if we are a little part of the mystery. Our second promise is orange, for offer fair and kind treatment to all people. Since we believe that all people are gifts, we need to be kind and fair to all of them. This heart reminds us to be fair and kind to all people. Our third promise is yellow, to yearn, to accept, and to learn about ourselves, others, and the mystery. By thinking about ourselves and other people and learning and celebrating our differences, we are all reminded by this flame that we are all connected to the mystery and that some people call God. Our fourth promise is green, for grow by exploring what is true and right in life. It is sometimes hard to decide what is true and right. So this flower reminds us that we grow as people by exploring answers to our questions. We may find different answers to the same questions, or questions that have no answers, but we keep asking. Our fifth promise is blue, for believe in our ideas and act on them. Once we figure out what is right and true for us, this bell reminds us. There we go. This bell reminds us that we have to try and do what's true and right, not just talk about it. The bell is like that little voice inside us that lets us know when something we do is right or wrong. Our sixth promise is indigo, or dark blue, for insist on a peaceful, fair, and free world. We try to do what's right, and we want all people to have freedom and justice in their lives. Justice means being fair to everyone, and peace means living in harmony together. The dove reminds us of peace for all. Our seventh and last promise is violet, a kind of purple color, for value our home, Earth, that we share with all living beings. We value each living being as a gift, just like we do people. This Earth reminds us again that we are all connected in our lives. We need to be careful of what we do so that all living beings on Earth will have clean water, clean air, and enough places to live. We need to remember that we are only one being on the Earth and that many others need our respect. These are the 7 principles we make to each other to help us be in community. They remind us that we are connected to each other and to the spirit of love and mystery. Thank you.
We now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this community and its mission to the larger world.
Shout turn around. No, I cannot turn around. No, I cannot turn around. You're turning back. I cannot turn around. You're turning back. No, not turn around. Get to the turn back. No, not turn around. Get to the turn. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, keep on singing, keep on shouting, keep on marching up to freedom land, marching up to freedom land.
What'd I tell you? Thank you so much. We're going to now kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds. And I'm going to begin with a candle for Barry Lubrick, who just got word has been diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma. He is being treated and says that he has high hopes, so please keep Barry in your thoughts. And also for our church member Bill Powell, who was going to be here today. He was a friend of Carl Maxey's, and he's also going through some cancer treatment and has some dizziness this morning, and wanted us to kindle a candle for him. And also a candle for my friend Happy Watkins, who continues to have some different issues in his life and always appreciates us lighting a candle for him. He called me last week and said, please have your community light a candle for me. Those things sure work. So we're always happy to think of our friend Happy. Let's take a moment of silence now on behalf of others that you might be thinking of this morning, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion.
Remember to focus on the light. I wrote the following words for the All Little Nature Chapel. During our preparation for Thanksgiving, this unique day when we meditate on the blessings of our lives, remember to focus on the light and on our birth-given ability to make a difference in the world. And life will explode into magic and joy. Namaste.
I'm going to read the opening paragraph from Karl Maxey's biography, which I'll refer to more later. Karl Maxey once said he wanted to be judged in life the same way he had been judged by referees in the boxing ring. Honestly, without prejudice, and based strictly on blows landed. He landed enough blows, both legal and political, for the New York Times to run a tribute to his life headlined, Type A Gandhi. Shortly after his death in 1997 at age 73. The Times called him one of the best-known lawyers in the country, a black attorney who had smashed color barriers in a creamy white town and made national headlines with lurid murder cases and outrageous war protest trials. Yet Maxey also urgently needed, for people to understand where he began. He once said he wanted his hometown of Spokane, Washington, to realize that he was a guy who started from scratch, black scratch. This was his way of saying he didn't start from square one. He started from square zero.
I've been running ever since. It's been a long, long time a coming, and I know a change is gonna come. Yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long, long time a coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Yes, it will. I go to the movie, and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long, long time a coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Yes, it will. Then I go to my brother, and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there have been times that I thought I couldn't last for long. Oh, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long, long time a coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Yes, it will.
Wow. God. I'm glad I don't really have to preach today. Carl Maxey's story tells itself. So, but wow, thank you. That was just amazing. Last April, I was browsing the shelves at Second Look Books when I saw the face of one of our past members gazing at me in the aisles. It was the almost life-size face of Carl Maxey on the cover of his 2008 biography, Carl Maxey, A Fighting Life, written by historian, author, and columnist Jim Kirshner. It's a great book, by the way. Fantastic read, well written. And as is often the case when a book catches my eye, I immediately thought, I'd like to read that and give a sermon about it someday. That's what I'm thinking when I go to the bookstore. And I've been particularly interested in knowing more about Maxey ever since learning that this important figure in our community had been an active member of our congregation for many years. He and his first wife, Nina, initially began shopping for a church, like a lot of parents, desiring religious education for their children. After considering various options, they were invited to our church by some friends. Carl and Nina discovered the Unitarian style and philosophy fit their open-minded, liberal bent perfectly, Kirshner says. They became active members, Maxey having served as one of our board presidents and Nina as our Sunday school superintendent. Many still remember him dressing up every year as our church Santa Claus. Church member Larry Richard tells me Carl went through 3 Santa suits in his tenure. It was one of his most favorite things to do. They began coming when their first child, Bill Maxey, was born in 1949, when he was still little, and continued after their second son, Bevan, who was born several years later in 1957. Carl continued as a member with his second wife, Lou, after he and Nina divorced in 1972, so long period of time here. The story of his own life, as we heard just a bit ago, begins and actually ends in tragedy. As Kirshner reminds us, Maxey often described himself as a guy who started from scratch, black scratch, in 1924 and took his life in 73 years later in 1997. But the story of any life, including Maxey's, is what happens between those bookends, between birth and death. And there is something telling about a man who started from square zero, as Kirshner says, going out the way that he strived to live every moment of his life, on his own terms. A more luckless child is hard to imagine. Kirshner begins the story, at least outside of a Charles Dickens novel. He was born Emmett Alfred, June 23, 1924, in Tacoma, Washington, to a 13-year-old mother who couldn't keep him, and was adopted around age 3 by a couple in Spokane, Carolyn and Carl Maxey Sr., who were among the 700 black residents living in a city of more than 100,000 people. Yet in some ways, Spokane would seem one of the best places for an African American to begin his early years in those days. Black residents could sit where they wanted on buses and trolleys, and there was a state law prohibiting segregation from public accommodations, including education, passed in 1890. In fact, Washington's anti-miscegenation or mixed marriage law had been repealed before that in 1887. And that didn't happen in Oregon, by comparison, until 1951. No, Spokane was not the Deep South when it came to racist laws and many behaviors, as a lot of non-Southern whites took pride in. But when it comes down to it, social attitudes were no less racist here than there. Despite the 1890 accommodation law, even by 1950 there were still no black doctors, lawyers, engineers, or public school teachers in Spokane, and the unemployment rate for blacks was 29% compared to 1.5% for whites. During the 1940s, according to historian Dwayne Mack, black males most often worked in service-oriented positions, even those with professional degrees as janitors, porters, waiters, bartenders, counter workers. Blacks also worked as chauffeurs, bellhops, and busboys, and coat and hat checkers in such white-owned establishments as the State Theater, Spokane Club, and the Old Black National Bank, where they were not allowed to be members. Black women mostly worked in private households as maids and such, but also got work as cooks, laundry washers, bartenders, counter workers, and the like. In many cases, they weren't allowed to patronize the very businesses that they worked for. Again, as Mack explains, just as in the South, blacks, older residents, newcomers, visitors alike, were denied service at most white-owned hotels, motels, restaurants, department stores, barber shops, beauty parlors, real estate offices, employment agencies, and nightclubs. They were often met with business signs stating, "We won't serve colored." And even if they were allowed into a business, whites were always served first, even if blacks were in line ahead of them. Unlike white women, black women weren't allowed to try on clothes before purchasing them in our local department stores. And Louis Armstrong, Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington, and Paul Robeson were among the many famous black entertainers barred from certain hotels, including the historic Davenport, while performing here in Spokane. If there were but one name, and this is not exaggeration on my part, if there were but one name to be credited with finally changing these dehumanizing racist behaviors in our fair city, it would have to be the name of the great Carl Maxey. Emmett Alfred may have received the name he'd be known for the rest of his life from his adoptive parents, but that was about all they gave him. Just a year after his adoption, Carl Sr. split, leaving his impoverished mother to care for little Carl on her own, something that she simply could not do. When he was 5, Carolyn Maxey dropped him off at the Spokane Children's Home, where he became a charge of the county. She died of heart failure a few years later in 1933 at age 39. Carl grew up with no memory of his adoptive father and slim recollection of his adoptive mother, though his hellish memory of the children's home remained with him the rest of his life. Despite glowing praise for the facility and numerous newspaper reports, Maxey witnessed much physical and sexual abuse at the home, which finally became public when he was 12 years old. After those were responsible were sent to the state penitentiary, its new management decided the first step in straightening things up was to kick out all of its non-white orphans, both of them. As the home's October 8, 1936 board minutes state, it was moved by Mrs. Irving and seconded by Mrs. Payne that the 2 colored boys, Carl Maxey and Milton Burns, be returned to the county, having been in the home for years. Motion carried. It was also moved by Mrs. Sutherland, seconded by Mrs. Bartleson, that the board go on record as voting to have no more colored children in the home from this time forward. Motion carried, unanimous. After being literally turned out on the streets with no place else to go, Maxey and Burns soon took themselves to the juvenile detention center, which took them in even though they hadn't committed any crime. Compared to the orphanage, they both enjoyed juvie. They were able to go to school, weren't abused, and got 3 meals a day. But the best thing about the detention center was the day both boys were spotted by Father Cornelius E. Byrne. Byrne, a Jesuit priest, invited them to live at Sacred Heart Mission on the Coeur d'Alene Reservation in DeSmet, Idaho. That's where Maxey first began to feel as if he actually had a home, and where Byrne became the closest thing to a father figure he would ever know. Byrne, whom the Coeur d'Alene tribe named Hest Spuus, meaning kind heart, having recognized his unusual potential, had a special fondness for young Maxey. The mission was, in fact, the beginning domino, tipped in a cascade of firsts, which seems to have lasted throughout most of Maxey's life. It's where he had his first boxing match at age 13, which he won against a 33-year-old. At age 15, Father Byrne got him an athletic scholarship at Gonzaga High School, though he also had to work at a job at the Spokane Club, serving the city's most elite citizens. One night during a dance there, the daughter of a prominent white family asked Maxey to dance with her, which he did, causing quite a buzz, to say the least. A daring move on Carl's part and an early sign of his eagerness to take on the status quo. That was another first. The first time a rich white girl danced with a poor black kid at the Spokane Club. Carl was a star athlete in football, basketball, and especially track, where he helped his team win the state championship by setting a 880-yard relay record during his senior year. Upon graduating in 1942, Carl wanted to be a dentist, the first black dentist in Spokane. At the time, there weren't any in Spokane, and white dentists, by and large, wouldn't accept black patients. He also wanted to be a college football player at Gonzaga. 2 firsts that were not in his stars. After hearing one too many racial slurs from his teammates, Maxey walked off the practice field and went directly to the boxing coach Joey August's office, announcing, "I want a box." Maybe that meant, "I want to hit something." Although he hadn't boxed since DeSmet, Coach August put him in a ring with an opponent that was heavier and had a lot more experience. Maxey proceeded to beat the tar out of that hotshot. Kirshner writes, "August stood there flabbergasted. 'Okay,' he finally said, 'you're on the team.'" And that's how the legend of King Carl was born. Like many his age, Maxey's college career was interrupted for wartime military service, where he hoped to put his fighting spirit to good use. Instead, he experienced the worst racism of his life in the Army. At the time, the military didn't trust black soldiers enough to let them fight, an attitude that didn't begin to change until after Maxey was discharged, when in 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, the War Department, desperate for soldiers, finally allowed black troops to fight beside whites. A survey indicated 64% of the latter were not in favor of it. And only 3 months after combat together started, 77% of them looked upon the black soldiers favorably. Integration works. It makes comrades of us all. Don't let anyone ever convince you otherwise. I grew up in an integrated neighborhood. I thought that's what the world looked like until I left my little domicile in Pacifica, California, and ventured throughout the rest of the country and find that it's still segregated for the most part. For Maxey, overall, the experience was heartbreaking, Lou Maxey said, because he wanted so badly to fight. But he would have to save fighting for the ring. With the GI Bill on his side, Maxey got a track scholarship to the University of Oregon, where one of his best friends, Bob Gibson, was also enrolled. And that's where his budding liberalism became entrenched, and where he met a brilliant, talented young woman from Ashland, Oregon, Neenan King, who would eventually become Neenan Maxey against her mother's wishes. While on campus, their relationship was also pretty controversial. Remember, at the time, mixed marriages were still illegal in Oregon. So were relationships, practically. Carl planned to take Neenan to a house dance, and it had to go all the way to the head of dorms, who reluctantly consented. That was another first for Carl and for Neenan. After a year at Oregon, though engaged, Carl returned to Spokane, digging ditches for the water company, and Neenan returned to Ashland, where she took up her previous interest in community theater and helped start a little tradition there known as the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. Anyone heard of that? Yeah. Having given up the idea of becoming a dentist, Carl now intended to go to law school, and soon ended up back where he started at Gonzaga, where he experienced many firsts. Reunited with his high school boxing coach, the other father figure in his life, Joey August, Carl Maxey went undefeated, 32-0 his entire college boxing career, and earned the Zags their first ever NCAA championship in boxing in 1950. Returning to Spokane as a hometown hero. And as good as he was at it, Maxey was a pacifist at heart and had mixed feelings about boxing. He learned early on not to take advantage of opponents that he could easily defeat and would rather win by decision than to knock the hell out of them. He learned, as his biography says, to carry an opponent, that is, to go easy on him. Once after defeating an opponent many worried he'd lose against, Maxey walked across the ring and gave the winning gloves to him, saying, "You take these gloves. They belong to you. You deserve them for a good fight." After winning the championship, to the surprise of many, Maxey announced that he was quitting boxing to concentrate on his law studies. And from that moment on was destined to take his fighting spirit into the legal arena. After becoming the first Gonzaga boxer to win a national championship, he went on to become the first African American to graduate from the university's law school, the first African American to pass the bar exam in Spokane, the first try at that, and Spokane's first and for a long time only African American attorney in 1951. It was hard to initially make a living at it. Like a lot of new attorneys, he'd go to the courthouse to have the judge assign him to a criminal defendant, given that there were no public defenders in those days, for $25 a day. Another slightly younger attorney at the time, Bill Powell, who I mentioned earlier, also one of our church members, told me just a couple of days ago that that's how he met Maxey. A judge assigned him initially, and then Maxey, who had more experience, to defend an African-American man charged with first-degree murder. Bill laughed when he recalled Maxey picking him up in his Cadillac. He always loved big cars, he says, to go visit their new client in jail. The defendant took an immediate dislike to Carl and accused him, get this, of being a member of the KKK. That was another first. I've had a lot of people who've disliked me, Maxey admitted, but nobody ever accused me of being a member of the Klan. But on that basis, he was able to have the man declared incompetent to stand trial. And had him reprimanded to a psychiatric hospital from which he escaped and disappeared. So neither Bill or Carl could decide if he was really insane or just smart. In either case, they both got a kick out of that case and remained among the best of friends throughout their careers. One of his big firsts was helping Spokane achieve one of its firsts. After a highly qualified African-American candidate had been rejected for a teaching position by the Spokane School Board in a school district where teachers were exclusively white, Maxey put his new legal gloves on and went working with the NAACP, threatening lawsuits and every other punch that he could throw at them to eventually convince the board that they better hire Eugene Breckenridge. Breckenridge went on to become one of the school district's most beloved teachers and was eventually named Educator Citizen of the Year, the Washington Education Association's highest honor. Within just a few years, several other African American teachers have been hired in the district, thanks largely to Carl Maxey. Though he mostly handled divorce cases to earn an income, most of his clients of whom were women, Maxey's purpose in life was really handling civil rights and social justice cases, which he often took pro bono. He used his position and the respect and love he earned within both the legal world and in the larger community to force open those doors to the clubs and businesses closed to blacks and to protect hundreds of conscientious objectors during Vietnam, having as many as 1,500 on the books that he handled pro bono, a war that he staunchly opposed. In one of his most remembered cases, he became attorney to Will Cawthon, an escaped fugitive from Georgia sentenced to death for a murder that he very likely did not commit. After being arrested in Washington, Maxey successfully fought to keep him from being extradited back to Georgia for execution and to live here in Spokane the rest of his life as a beloved and free man. Speaking of fighting for freedom, in 1964, Maxey went to Mississippi to help free hundreds of voting rights activists from jail, including Stokely Carmichael. He also got to walk the streets with Martin Luther King Jr. and came back shocked by the level of racism and the amount of fear this unusually undaunted King Carl personally felt in the South. He and two other attorneys who went with him were invited to give a public presentation about their experience here at our church, during which Maxey said, when it came to the rights of blacks, Mississippi had a complete lack of law and order. After King's assassination, Kirshner suggests that Maxey became less optimistic about his own power to bring about the level of change that he so desperately wanted. Still, he kept fighting to do so, including several failed attempts to enter into politics where he could influence the laws themselves. Rather than going into the details, I'd like to begin to end by recreating a bit of his campaign rally, which should suffice in showing all that he stood for, fighting, as he said, for the young, the old, the black, the poor, and those who would form a coalition of conscience. I am running for ending the war now. That's going to be your line, okay? I'm running for ending the war now. For a volunteer army? Now. For granting amnesty to conscientious objectors? Now. For an end to massive military spending? Now. For a just and humane society for all? Now. For an end to racism in labor unions? Now. In schools? Now. In housing? Now. In work? Now. For a guaranteed income? Now. For equal rights for our Latino and Native American brothers and sisters? Now. For abortion rights? Now. So he was a little impatient. And there's much more that I could but don't have time to say about Carl Maxey, one of our great church ancestors and a cherished ancestor of our larger community. I'll close by acknowledging the sadness that many of us still feel, knowing in the end he took his own life, feeling partly discouraged and at not having helped make the kind of progress that he wanted. Can you imagine? Today, I can't help but wonder if his sudden change in personality, his depression, and his unexpected suicide might be diagnosed as boxer's brain, is what we now recognize as the symptoms of CTE, chronic traumatic encephalitis. Or maybe, given his own failing health, as I said at the beginning, he decided it was finally time to throw in the towel, that he would leave this world the way he lived it, on his own terms. Whatever the case, I hope his example in our community and in our world inspires all of us to live our lives a bit more like Carl Maxey, not succumbing to the odds against us or allowing ourselves to be defined by the prejudices of others. To fight for what we believe in. To fight for those who need us most. To care for the well-being of our adversaries. To be kind and humble. To believe in ourselves even when no one else does. To risk losing if we want to win. And to accomplish the impossible on one day, then get up the next day and do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Thank you.
And to honor Carl, let's rise as we are able and sing one more step. One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us, and everyone will take one more step. One more word, we will say one
Thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. Buddha. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.